Hello, Will Johnson, UniteAmericaFirst.com. I have a special guest, Dr. Charles Jacobs. IAbolish.org is his website, IAbolish.org. He has ran this program to where he's trying to abolish slavery throughout the entire world. You still have people that are being enslaved as of today. This young man has videos and many documentation that shows exactly what's going on and how we should be getting involved to help the American Anti-Slavery Group. Well, Dr. Charles Jacobs, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So you're the founder, and I believe this is American Anti-Slavery Group. That's right? IAbolish.org. Could you give us a little bit more information about that and about yourself? And then we'll get in talking about what you have headed for the future and where you think we're all headed towards.
Sure. So I was born in Newark, New Jersey, before your parents probably. And I might have been the last white guy out of Newark. So I grew up in a black neighborhood, transitional. And had a lot of black friends. I went to Newark Rutgers, joined the NAACP, and I was kind of like an anti-racist when it was difficult, actually. Now it's, if you're not, you're bad. Then if you were, you're bad. So I went to college. I I apologize for saying this. I actually went to Harvard. and then later I became a management consultant, and I don't know, I went to Martin Luther King's March on Washington, and along with tens of thousands of other people wept at that speech. And then one day I'm flying home from a management consulting gig, and I was sitting on an airplane reading Economist magazine, and page 47, a little tiny article. You can buy and sell black women and children for $50 in parts of Africa. And I said, what? How can this be? That's wrong. That's wrong. So
today.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Today. But it's still, we'll get to today.
Okay.
Change. No. Okay. Today, right. And during my time on the planet, you could buy and sell black people for $50. So there was two things about that article. First, the horrible fact that it happened. But the other thing is, why the hell was it on page 47? Why wouldn't this be on the front page? So those are two aspects of it that kind of molded the next 15 years of my life. There was the activist part, which is, we got to stop this. And then there was the intellectual part, is why didn't the West care about these particular black lives? So I went to New York. I did a lot of research, and in those days, before you were born, and in those days, it wasn't on the internet. I actually had to walk into a library and look at microfiche. It was a little bit more difficult. And I found that all the groups who were supposed to know about this knew about it. Like the Amnesty International, they had it in their files, good reports, but in the back of their files. Human Rights Watch, same thing. So they knew about it, and they weren't acting, right? They weren't acting. And I tried to figure, so then I went to New York, and I found the diaspora groups of Sudanese and Mauritanian Africans who were living in New York, and I put them together, and I said, guys, we got to bust this open. And they were saying, well, our people are enslaved. We're knocking on the doors of the human rights community. We're knocking on the doors of the church. Nobody cares. I said, we're going to make them care. So I busted it open with an op-ed in the New York Times. I wrote an op-ed with a Mauritanian Arab guy, a Mauritanian Muslim black guy. And Mohammed Athieh, his name was. And it was called Bought and Sold. And we outlined exactly what I'm about to tell you, that in Sudan, Africa's largest country, there was a holy war against the Black South waged by the Arab Muslim North. Okay, nobody knew the word jihad then, but that's what it was. Okay, and Arab militias would storm into African villages, shoot the men, and capture the women and children as slaves by the hundreds of thousands and take them back. In Mauritania, Islam had conquered that country. The Arabs had conquered that country. So all the blacks in the north of Mauritania were already Muslim. Nevertheless, the Arab Berbers enslaved these black Muslim Africans. Even though it's against the Quran, just like in the West, racism trumps religious doctrine. And they had these, so you got these black Muslim slaves. Today, Will, there's 500,000 black Muslim slaves serving Arab masters in Mauritania today, as we speak, 2020. So once the article hit the New York Times, it was a huge storm in Harlem. There was a huge storm. I went on Black TV, PBS. He was the most famous national black reporter, and we were on there. A reporter from a New York black newspaper, the City Sun, his name was Sam Cotton. He started writing about this, and you have a picture of his headline up there, Arab Masters, Black Slaves. And there was like this revolt happening. Like, why isn't anybody caring about this problem? And we worked it, and I finally found this wonderful group based in Switzerland called Christian Solidarity International. I'm Jewish, they were Christian. And they were going to Sudan helping to buy back the slaves from the north. And we raised money to help them buy back the slaves, and tens of thousands of people were brought back to the south. I got an award from this. Martin Luther King's wife gave me an award for this, Boston Freedom Award. And so we saved tens of thousands of people from slavery. The question is, and we had black allies too. We had Eleanor Holmes Norton. We had Donald Payne, who unfortunately passed away recently. He was a congressman in New Jersey. We had the NAACP. We had everybody. But in the black community, there was this fight between the Farrakhan group and everybody else. Because Farrakhan, to him, this was a threat. Because his job is to tell black people in America that Islam is the path, or the Nation of Islam, his version of it anyway.
And they're enslaving black people.
Is the path to freedom. Well, wait a minute. It's not the path to freedom in Mauritania or Sudan. And I can tell you in Nigeria and Algeria and Libya, where they're buying and selling black people, it's not the path to freedom at all. So he was really upset and infuriated, had a big fight with us. I think he was embarrassed by this, and he withdrew. He just ran away from the whole issue.
Because to my understanding, he was saying that none of it was true.
Right.
That black people were not being enslaved.
Yeah, we have a clip there at a press conference in Washington, D.C. Some reporters went up and asked him at his own press conference, Minister Farrakhan, what do you say about the fact that there's buying and selling black people in the Muslim country of Sudan? And you could play it, or I could mime him. If you think there's slavery in Sudan, you go find out, to the reporters. So 2 reporters from the Baltimore Sun went to Sudan with Christian Solidarity International. They participated in a slave redemption. They came back. They got nominated for a Pulitzer on it. Minister Farrakhan, you're wrong. Here's the slaves. And they had pictures of the people that they had and interviews of the people they had interviewed. So I had gone to Sudan 3 times with Christian Solidarity. They're my heroes. They're the bravest of the brave. One guy, John Eibner, arranged this whole kind of underground railroad with the repurchase of the slaves. And it was an illegal trip because it was during the war. And we flew in, I can't say how because it's kind of secret. We flew into South Sudan, which is the black part of Sudan. And we witnessed on video the buyback of the slaves. And it was the most important thing, apart from marrying my wife, in my life that I ever did. I mean, it was just amazing to see people being free.
So I have a picture here with you and a group of people.
Right.
Is this part of it? Explain this to us.
Yeah, this is right after one of the redemptions where these are kids from the African village who came out to be the porters who would bring food bags. You can see a food bag down there. It says Christian Solidarity International to the site where they would give food and medicines and tents to the people that we redeemed. So that's in South Sudan. Those are Dinka tribesmen. The Dinka are the most beautiful people in the world. They are the blackest black people. They're absolutely gorgeous. And I fell in love with them. And that's the Dinka. Yeah. And
wow.
and that, as I said, I'm Jewish. To me, the Dinka were the Jews of our time because they were being slaughtered. 2 to 3 million people were killed in this holy war, jihad. And nobody cared. And the Christians call it the hidden Holocaust. And I think they have a right to call it that.
Wow.
So
well, tell us about this one here.
Well, that's Martin Luther King's wife, Coretta Scott King. And that's the mayor of Boston. He passed away. Well, so did she then. And that's when I had still a little bit of hair. That was in Old South Church in Boston when I was given the Boston Freedom Award for helping to redeem the slaves and making it a big American issue.
Oh, wow. And we have this one here.
Okay, so that is a picture. This is very interesting. So I said in Mauritania, the Arab Berbers enslaved black Africans who have been converted already, forcibly persuaded, I don't know, believe it, don't believe it, but they were converted to Islam. So that little girl, I don't know, was she 12 years old? She's a slave. And she's washing, this is from Newsweek magazine. She's washing the hands of her masters. And who knows what else she has to do, when the camera's not there. That's what it's all about. It's about concubines. So that still goes on. And everybody knows it goes on. I mean, this is not a secret. If you just have anybody who's listening to this, Google Mauritania slavery, and they'll find dozens of pictures like this.
This is crazy, and this is happening in our world today. And a lot of people want to turn a blind eye to it. And I want to ask you a little bit about how BLM comes into play with this, because I know BLM even took a trip over to the Middle East, and they have a coalition with the Muslim Brotherhood, to my understanding. So, but before we do that, tell me about this next picture here that you sent me here, and what is this telling us here?
In Mauritania. So one of the black reporters in New York, who unfortunately died very young, if he were alive, Sam Cotton, today, there would be it'd be hell to pay for the silence in the black community about what's going on, because he worked for the New York City Sun, and his boss said, go find out if this is a true story or not. And so Sam interviewed me, and then he flew to Mauritania undercover, and he interviewed all the slaves, and he wrote a great book called Silent Terror. It's an underground classic. My God, it's an incredible book. And he took this picture, and this is an Arab Berber man with his slave. That's his slave.
Wow.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, wow. And so, when I found this out, Will, I thought the smartest thing that I could do would be to reawaken the anti-apartheid coalition. Because if everybody knew that there was injustice, a horrible injustice against blacks in northern Africa, the same people who marched in the streets to end apartheid in South Africa, well, they would come out in the streets again, but they didn't. And the reason that they didn't is very interesting, because the human rights community, the establishment, is a hoax. It's not about justice or injustice. It's an opportunity for white people to say, I'm not a bad white guy. I'm not. So if you can find these bad things that white people do, I'm marching. I am marching. But if you find out things that are done to blacks by non-Westerners, that's a distraction from my message. That's not what I want to talk about.
Right.
So it's a double sin. It's a sin of, making Western civilization look a whole lot worse than it is. Of course, it's not perfect. Nobody thought it was perfect. There's not one perfect human being in the world. And it's abandoning those people who are beset by non-Western oppressors, right? The people who most need Western human rights action would be those people, the people who are enslaved, also the people in the Muslim world who are, the women and the gays who were thrown off roofs. I mean, all the oppressed by non-Westerners are abandoned by the Western civil rights and human rights movement because that's not their game. Their game is, I'm going to show you I'm a good white guy.
Yeah. Well, how does all this tie into BLM?
So BLM, look, there's a problem with the phrase BLM, right? Black Lives Matter. Who doesn't see Black Lives Matter? I know. I don't want to live in a country where Black lives don't matter. Of course, Black lives matter. And when I saw that picture of the cop killing that guy, George Floyd, I teared up. I was angry. I mean, we should all be angry. And that's legitimate. What the problem is that the organization named Black Lives Matter, which is funded by people you don't want to know about, and which is founded by people who are Marxists and anti-Semites and Islamists. That's the problem, because they're trying to tell the world not that we can reform bad cops, which we have to do, not that America doesn't still have racists. Of course there are. I mean, every place does.
We still have Democrats, of course.
Of course, of course. I mean, look, but they're trying to say that America itself is bad, and that we have to have a revolution, and we know how that goes. And also, they are linked up with the anti-Israel crowd, big time. So, for the same reason, I'll give you a parallel. Here's a parallel. They don't want to talk about the black kids who are being shot in Chicago by black thugs.
Correct.
Many, many, many more of them than are harmed by racist cops. Okay?
Correct.
Same reason they wouldn't want to talk about the enslavement of blacks by Arabs in North Africa. 5 countries. You got 5 countries: Sudan, Mauritania, Nigeria, Libya, and Algeria, where black people are captured, bought, sold, raped, and impregnated and killed by people who are not white. So how's that help them? That doesn't help their cause. So the sin here is both. This is the sin and the cure. The sin is that they're abandoning the people who most need us. The cure is to awaken abolitionists like we did 15 years ago. And let's all together emancipate these people. That's what America is. I mean, if America is anything, we disagree about everything in the world. The one thing we don't disagree about is one man should not be owning another person. So this is something that can unite everybody. And I hope, people can join us, and let's free these people.
Yeah, we should be fighting for that. But, here in America, they have people fighting over, I like to call it petty stuff. And they go on people's emotions. And, like you just said, Black Lives Matter, they all matter. All lives matter. And they've demonized the phrase saying that all lives matter because you're not paying attention or putting the emphasis on black lives. Like they say that we need to concentrate on black lives right now. Well, how about if we just concentrate on black lives, are we not doing the same thing that they're accusing white racist people of doing? I mean, seriously.
Yeah, and it's not black lives. It's certain black lives.
Exactly. Exactly.
Somebody should put a little sticker that says the word certain. And every time you see a Black Lives Matter sign, put the sticker certain Black Lives Matter.
Yeah.
That's what they're talking about. Only the ones that you can blame white people for. And there's no doubt that you can. There's no doubt. It's a matter of proportion.
Yeah. I was at a rally and some BLM members came up, and this was in Washington, D.C. And after they were up there, I got up there and I said, the only time that Black Lives matter is when a white person or a cop is involved. Other than that, the Black lives don't matter. And even if you go to the Black Lives Matter website and look at their About Me page, which they've recently updated because so many people were talking about their About Me page, it doesn't even include the heterosexual black male. And it doesn't include any it doesn't include any white people. So and since they people have gotten wind of what their whole mission was about, they've changed it, but they're still about homosexuality and saying that that's the new battlefront. And even then, it's still not about black people. It's not about people. It should be about people. They would have, personally, I think they would have gotten a bigger response. You brought up George Floyd. Had they said all lives matter, we need to all come together and address these different issues, because we all have issues. But they didn't do that because they want more division. So let me ask you this. Why do you think that you have BLM going over to the Middle East, working with the Muslim Brotherhood and implementing some of the stuff that they want? And what I mean by that is now all of a sudden they're tearing down statues. And see, I've done a little history, and I've learned when Muhammad came about that one of the first things that he did was go around throughout the entire country and tear down statues, basically history, pictures, statues, anything that represented or reminded people of the past so that he could rewrite it. And now we're seeing BLM leading that. And of course, you have Antifa jumping in with that.
Right. So I would say to the people who, the people who lead Black Lives Matter are very happy that the American Muslim community has joined them and the American Arab community has joined them. Why don't they say to those guys, well, you could join us, but just take a second before you come to the march. Why don't you do a press release that says, any Arab country, any Muslim country who has black slaves, we're against that. We're going to fight for that. We're going to help emancipate the slaves. Then you can come to our march. That'd be good. I don't think that's about to happen.
I agree. That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. It's just like the Planned Parenthood. There was a Christian group that put chalk. I'm not sure if you're aware of it, but they took chalk and they wrote, Black preborn lives matter. And because they were doing it in chalk, the liberal mayor there arrested them. And so my opinion, Planned Parenthood, or I like to call them, and a buddy of mine brought it to my attention, Planned Parenthood, it's another form of slavery, and they're killing black people at an alarming rate. And then you can't speak out against Planned Parenthood because then they want to demonize you. It's something that you can do all of these horrible things to black people, but when someone white comes along and try to speak positive about black people, for example, President Trump. I've been to the White House twice with many black people in the White House, but they still demonize him, saying that he's racist. I mean, and it's like, but every time you do something horrific or horrible to black people and there's no one white involved, then it's okay. It gets a pass. Why is that?
Well, wow. I think it's all about a struggle for power. I think this is not about truth, but it's about power. And I think the country is divided. And I think that, I work a lot on the college campuses, and I could tell you that, well, even in the grade schools now, the kids are taught America's not so good. We're a racist country. We started on slavery. Any wealth in this country came from people picking cotton. It's not true. And so it just goes and goes and goes. I don't know. I do not believe that Trump is racist, although I think he could have been. He can clarify that a little bit more articulately than he has, but I don't believe he's been racist. He's a New York guy. He's been banging around with black people and Jews, everybody, for the longest time. So I don't know. It's a way to gain power because there's so many people who are against him, that you can make yourself bigger by joining that train.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah. For me, I look at it that, and the phrase BLM before, right after Obama said that Trayvon Martin, if I had a son, he would look like my son. And then the birth of BLM came about. And I saw how, and I call it demonic. I saw exactly the agenda behind BLM. And the first thing I came to my mind was, instead of Black Lives Matter, was that because Lucifer manipulates. And people are being manipulated at such an alarming rate, and they think they're fighting for a just cause. And that's the amazing thing about it. People truly believe that they're fighting for something, for justice, and they're doing just the opposite. I mean, there's no time in history where you can go to a federal building and want to burn it down and call it justice, and then they demonize you because you don't let them burn it down.
And now they're burning Bibles. Did you see?
Importantly, yes, they are. They're burning flags and Bibles. Yes. It's like Nazi Germany all over again. And I mean, I hate to say it, but it looks like this is George Soros' hands all in it.
I think that's true. I think it's been shown. I've done some research myself on who funds Black Lives Matter, and groups that he funds are heavy contributors to Black Lives Matter. So, you know, these are radical Marxists so it's like this. It's radical Marxists and radical Muslims have joined together in what people call the red-green axis, right? Red for Marx, red for communists, green for Islam. The red-green axis is trying to tear America down, and the way to best do that is to have people hate each other, and it's frightening to see that this can happen. But I believe that, you know, in the end, with God's help, we'll come to the truth, and we know we're brothers and sisters. We're Americans, and there's no place like America in the whole world.
That's true.
Imperfect as it is, listen, talk about slavery. What civilization didn't have slavery? None. Blacks had it, and there were black slavers in Africa.
Yep.
Christians had slaves, Jews had slaves, Muslims had slaves, Poles had slaves. Everybody has it. That's not the question about who had slaves. The question is who got rid of it. That's the question. And we got rid of it at the cost of 600,000 American deaths in the Civil War. So we got to be proud of that. I mean, slavery was with humanity since almost the biblical times. So to have gotten rid of it is such a victory and a blessing that we deserve praise for that. And of course, there's still racism in America. Of course there is. There's racism every place, but we're really trying to get rid of it. And we voted for a black president twice. The first time Obama became president, I had people tell me, it'll never happen. America's too racist. America's too racist. Happened twice.
Yeah, happened twice.
Account for something.
Yeah, it happened twice, but they don't care about that because I think there's a true sinister agenda right now, and that's to tear down America and do a whole reset and bring in Marxism, communism, because they can't stand for America to be, as great as it is. And one of the things I have a conversation when I'm out on the streets, when I'm talking to different people, specifically black people, they're trying to tear down America, constantly tear down America. And I ask one simple question. Can you name one other country on the planet where black people don't have it so well? Just one. And then they look at me and then like a light bulb go off, and then they want to change the subject because they know they're trying to tear down the very country where black people have it the best on the planet.
They don't want to do compared to what, right? You say to them, well, compared to what? Show me another country that's better. They don't want to do that because they're utopianists, and they think that unless we have perfection, it's not worth saving. So if there's one racist white guy in America left, America's not worth a damn.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And that's how they see it. And, it's just crazy. So let me ask you this. What do you think can be done? Because I see that you're doing a lot and you have a lot going on your website, which is absolutely awesome. But what can people do to help you and to combat this demonic evilness that's taking place on our planet?
So I'm going to make a couple of suggestions. First of all, go to iabolish.org and you can learn about we have all the data there and all the films and all the documents and official documents and human rights reports that show what the slavery is like. Interviews with slaves. I'm going to make a suggestion to you. We have a guy, the chief of communications of the American Anti-Slavery Group is named Francis Bach. He's a Dinka. He's an escaped slave. He's absolutely articulate. I suggest you bring him on. Francis can go around the country and speak to people about what it's like to be a slave in the 20th century. 21st century. And people should come and help us and learn what we have. We have redeemed a lot of slaves, and we helped create a new country, South Sudan. And, Michelle Obama got excited about the Nigerian case for about 3 minutes. She had this thing, #SaveOurGirls, because the same thing is happening in Nigeria.
I remember that.
Remember that? Okay. Well, as soon as she figured out that this is not politically correct, that it was Muslims who were doing it, she cut out. No more Save Our Girls. No more Save Our Girls. That seems to have disappeared. And I'm guessing that's the reason.
It sounds logical.
For this, she was excited about trying to save our girls. Well, she's not anymore. She wasn't. For 2 weeks later, disappeared. So we can, the Nigerian American community is a very prosperous Black community. Doctors, lawyers, pharmacists, they're wonderful people. We need to organize them to be in the lead of this, because I think Black people should be leading it, and they will. And I'm convinced they will. I'm talking more and more to Black conservatives like yourself. And all it takes is like 10 guys like you have a press conference, say, hey, let's free the slaves. Stop everything else, because Black slaves' lives matter too. So that's where I'm kind of headed for this. And people can educate themselves on the website and do your own Googling. I mean, this is nothing hard about finding out the truth if you want to find it out.
Well, awesome. Well, Doctor, thank you so much for coming on with me. It's been a real honor and pleasure. Please, let's plan to have more conversations so we can get the word out, because this is something, what you're doing, I think the entire world needs to be aware of it. And it takes really a brave person. Let me ask you one last question. What made you decide to get into this fight, this battle? Because I'm pretty sure you could be doing a million other things, but what inspired you?
I was pissed off. I was angry. I was inspired. I did go to Martin Luther King's speech, and I still, if I hear it again, I could tear up. I think my Jewishness also, they were like, this happened to us, stuff like this happened to us, and we were slaves in Egypt. So a combination of that, and also I'm kind of an out of the box person. I just, how could you not do it? That's what I would say. People say, why did you do it? Well, how could you, why didn't you do it?
We're talking about human beings. Yeah. We're talking about humanity. And I completely understand what you're saying. For me, I was never into politics or just speaking out. I never thought that in a million years that I would be doing what we're doing right now. But I got to the point to where I saw the direction we're going. And I'm like, how can you not say something? How can you not get involved at some capacity? How can you not? So I completely understand.
So listen, if you and I were back in Newark, where I was born, you and I would be in a room together, and we would prick a finger at each one, and we would put the fingers together and make blood brothers, because we are.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, hey, thank you, Doctor, so much for coming on with me and having this awesome discussion.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Take care.